Hello all, and welcome to the first of 3 topic lectures for today's theme of entertainment. First, we're going to look at how both the upper classes and the lower classes enjoyed the last meal of the day, dinner. Dinner, or the cena, was the largest of the day's meals. Most Romans had not eaten anything substantial since they had woken that morning. Dinner was also the most communal of meals, as it tended to be the one meal the whole family would enjoy together. Frequently, dinner was shared also with friends, clients, or acquaintances. Dinners ranged from small, intimate affairs to grandiose events. Because the houses of poorer families were small and rarely had kitchens, dinner was either purchased from a local eatery or cooked in a portable brazier. Aristocratic houses, however, had their own kitchens and often a specialized servile household staff, which could include butchers, chefs, bakers, servers, and entertainers. So first, let's look at some upper-class dinner parties. Dinner parties happened in the dining room, or the triclinium. Although many people sat on chairs at tables to eat the cena, particularly the lower classes, those with the means and desire could purchase the required dining room furniture for what was called a triclinium. Triclinium literally meant 3 couches in Latin. In this arrangement, 3 couches were set up around a table in a U shape pattern with the head towards the center and the feet towards the outside. Each couch was wide enough to accommodate 3 diners side by side. A small table placed in the center was therefore accessible to all 3 couches. The positions on the couches were ranked, with summus on lectus summus being the most prestigious and imus on lectus imus being the least prestigious. Because dinner parties were one of the most important social functions held within an aristocratic house, a great deal of effort was put into decoration and location of the dining room, so as to create a suitable environment not only for comfort, but also to delight the guests and impress them with the refinement of the host. Creating a sense of an open, natural environment was frequently the decorative goal within a triclinium. In atrium and courtyard-style houses, most triclinia were located off the peristyle, so the garden would serve as a backdrop to the dinner party. The image on your screen now is of a preserved triclinium in Pompeii from the house of Julia Felix. On the next slide, we'll see how in building this house, they made sure to place the dining room somewhere central to the house and a place where they could show off their wealth to the diners. In the upper left corner is a diagram of the layout of the house of Julia Felix. The location of the dining room, F, is circled in red. As you can see, the dining room is off the peristyle, D, which is accessed through the atrium, A. The top middle photo is of the peristyle. In order to create a sense of an open, natural environment, the triclinium overlooks the garden, pictured at the top left. But it is indoors, as you can see at the bottom left, so that it can be used year-round. In addition to creating a sense of an open, natural environment, many houses also had an outdoor dining area. This one is from the house of the Ephebe in Pompeii, which you can see here. Outdoor dining rooms were quite common, as shown by the excavations of Pompeii. These triclinia were frequently placed in gardens under an awning, often near outdoor shrines or fountains. The dining room on your screen has a shrine at the back. In city houses, the closeness of the neighboring houses forced dining rooms to be resourceful with wall painting and other decorative elements to create artificial scenes of nature. In country villas, however, dining rooms frequently looked outward towards the courtyard. It was common in aristocratic houses for there to be numerous triclinia, including ones designated as summer and winter dining rooms. The first would take advantage of the summer breezes to cool the dining room. The winter triclinium was generally more sheltered and warmer. Vitruvius, talking about building triclinia, says, winter triclinia and baths should face the sun as it sets during the winter so that it can benefit from the sunlight in the late afternoon, and more importantly, to receive the light from the setting sun, which in turn warms these rooms in the evening when they are being used. Spring and autumn triclinia should face east. As long as the windows are kept closed until the afternoon, they can stay cool until the time of day when they are used. Summer triclinia should face north because with that orientation, they do not receive heat during the summer solstice. Turned away from the rays of the sun, they are always cool and healthy and provide the greatest enjoyment during the hot months of the year. We can see these ideas in play in Pliny's description of his own triclinium, which took advantage of the peristyle setting and the villa's natural surrounding. Pliny says, "At the primary end of the portico stands the triclinium. From here is visible through the folding doors, the far end of the courtyard, and beyond that, a meadow and a good deal of the countryside. From the windows of this room, one can see the side of the courtyard and the section of the villa that sticks out from the main part of the building. Also visible are the groves and trees that surround the nearby hippodrome." Dinner invitations were exchanged between members of the aristocracy as favors and marks of prestige and political connection. Patrons might invite clients as a reward for faithful service. A more prestigious host might invite a protege to allow him to interact with other important people. A client or protege could also invite his patron to dinner in order to curry favor and try to improve his position in the eyes of his patron. Although, if the disparity in prestige between host and prospective guests was too great, the invitation was usually declined. Often, a person would invite to dinner his social equal, more akin to a true friend in the modern sense, with the expectation that his friend would return the favor and invite him to dinner in the near future. Dinner parties were popular settings in Roman literature. In the poem in Harvey number 292, the poet Martial invites his friend Torianus to dinner. He promises a variety of simpler types of food, drink, and entertainment. This poem includes a long list of foods, an often appearing element in the literary motif of invitations to a dinner party. The genre is so common that we even have mock joking dinner invitations, like Harvey number 239 by Catullus. It says, "If the gods favor you, my friend Tibullus, you will dine with me in my house in just a few days' time. Just make sure to bring a good and sizable meal with you. Remember also not to arrive without a good-looking girl and some wine, salt, and all of the jokes you can muster. If you will bring all of that, my charming friend, you will dine well. You see, the wallet of your comrade Catullus is full of cobwebs. In return for your generosity, you will receive my undying love, or whatever you would consider to be sweeter and more refined. I will also give you some perfume, which Venus and Cupid gave to my girlfriend. Indeed, when you smell it, Fabulous, you will ask the gods to make you all nose." Harvey number 294 is another example of this. Pliny jokingly tells his friend that he owes him dinner because he didn't show up to dinner at his place. The past few invitations have been between friends, hence why they are able to joke. But not all of the guests at dinner parties were of such close social status. At times, patrons would invite their lower-class clients. Such an invitation was undoubtedly a rare delight for the client, who was given the opportunity to eat the delicacies and enjoy the entertainments usually reserved for those of higher social standing. All too often, however, it seems the pleasure of such occasions was tempered in that the host used the dinner to remind the client of his lowly status. In the passage translated here, Juvenal contrasts the experience of the client and his less than generous patron at such a dinner. Because one of the most important aspects of throwing a dinner party was to impress the guest, some hosts thought it unnecessary to impress guests of lower status. Juvenal says, "You have been invited to come to dinner, and your first thought is that it is repayment for your long-time good service to your patron. It is true. The food you receive is the profit gained from your relationship with him. And indeed, he does reckon your invitation as repayment. And so at the end of the day, he says, 'Come to dinner with me.' And you ask that, and you think that this is an answer to your prayers. What more could you want? At last you have your reward for all those days you woke up in the middle of the night to go to your patron's salutatio in a rush with your sandals falling off because you were afraid that he and the mob of his other clients might have already left the patron's house to go on the day's rounds in town. Then once you're at dinner, you come to realize the reality of your invitation. The wine you are given is so bad that even a sponge refuses to soak it up. Your patron is a different story. He drinks wine that was bottled in the days when consuls still grew their hair long." While surely an exaggeration, it would seem that dinner parties with a mixture of social classes would often include methods to maintain decorum and remind people of their social position. Pliny the Younger, who always aimed to depict himself as the proper Roman gentleman, wrote a letter about a similar situation he witnessed to show how great he is. He says, "This man seemed in his own eyes to be refined yet frugal. To me, however, he seemed rather vulgar and extravagant. At dinner, he served very rich meals to himself and a few others. To the rest of the diners, however, he served cheap meals with small portions. Wine was served in 3 small bottles, with each bottle containing a different quality of wine. The reason for this was not to give the guests the luxury of choosing what they would like to drink, but rather to remove any chance of refusing what was given to each person. Pliny then goes on to say that he serves everyone the same food and wine. He invites people to eat dinner, not to be discriminated socially. He makes all of his guests equal in all things. And the man next to him asked, "That must cost you a lot of money." "Not at all," I replied. "How is that possible?" he asked. "Because my freedmen do not drink the same wine I would usually drink, but rather when I dine with them, I drink the kind of wine my freedmen would drink." Much like the rest of aristocratic life, dinner parties were a time for the rich to advertise their wealth and power. A great deal of time, effort, and money went into preparing the event. Plutarch says that in the late Republic, the senator Lucullus held a dinner party costing 200,000 sestertii. Of course, it should be kept in mind that in the 1st century CE, a family of 4 could live at subsistence level for a year at a mere 800 sestertii. Such expenditure, even by the aristocracy, was unusual and generally only merited mention because it was so exceptional and extravagant, even in the realm of aristocratic self-promotion, especially for emperors. Harvey number 298, which is about Lucius Verus, is a very late example of this. But here I want to compare 2 related emperors, Caligula and Augustus, to show how increasing luxury became a hallmark of the empire. Augustus is described as being extremely frugal in Harvey number 299. It says, Augustus preferred to eat only light and cheap meals. He preferred second-rate bread, small fish, buffalo cheese pressed by hand, and green figs from the second harvest. His own need to eat does not seem to have preoccupied his thoughts. He often would eat dinner alone, either before the beginning of a dinner party or after it was over. During the dinner itself, he would often not eat anything at all. In comparison, the dinner of Caligula was extravagant. Harvey number 297 says, "They bring from everywhere every food that has ever been known just to feed their demanding appetites. Of course, their stomachs, weakened from their delicacies, are barely able to keep down what was brought from the farthest ocean. Indeed, they vomit so that they can eat, and eat so that they can vomit. It seems that nature produced the Emperor Gaius Caesar merely to demonstrate how supreme vice could follow supreme power. One dinner party alone, he once spent 10 million sestertii. It is not hard to see the extremely over-the-top party described in Harvey number 298 arising because of this change in expenditure. However, we need to keep in mind exactly how much of this was true and how much of it was propaganda, especially since Caligula was very much hated. As we talked about last week, freedmen gained the stereotype of being luxurious. As a former slave who had earned his vast wealth through business, Trimalchio embodies everything the old aristocracy found distasteful in the freedman Nouveau Riche. The most famous part of the Satyricon, the work in which Trimalchio appears, is a description of a very extravagant dinner he threw. Here are 2 excerpts that show the extravagant dishes he has prepared and the dramatics he planned. The entire dinner scene is filled with little hints at the extravagance of Trimalchio's house. So the first excerpt reads, "The next dish to be brought out was not as large as I expected it to be, but the novelty did catch everyone's attention. The round serving tray had the 12 signs of the zodiac arranged in a circle. Over each sign, the artist had placed food that was proper and fitting to the sign." The second excerpt reads, "What? This pig is not even gutted? By God, it isn't. Get the cook out here right now." A cook with a sorry look on his face was brought to the table. He admitted that he had forgotten to gut the pig. "How could you forget such a thing?" Trimalchio exclaimed. "From the way he speaks, you would think he had merely forgotten to season the beast. Prepare this man for a good beating." Without delay, the cook had been stripped of his clothing and stood frowning between 2 torturers. Everyone began to intercede on the cook's behalf, saying, "Mistakes happen. Please forgive the man. If he does the same thing again, none of us will speak on his behalf." Trimalchio's expression by this time had softened into a smile. He said, "Therefore, since your memory is so bad, gut the pig here in front of us." The cook put his clothes back on and pulled out a knife. He cut the belly of the pig from one end to the other with a trembling hand. Without delay, the slit widened from the pressure, and sausages and black puddings poured out. But this type of dinner party was reserved for the most wealthy and elite. The lower classes would normally eat dinner at home or dine out at a bar or inn. The lower class poor who chose not to spend a quiet evening at home had other options in the city. These special shops were characterized by the ubiquitous bar counter facing the street. These counters had large jars set into them so that the lip of the jar just reached over the countertop. In these jars, wine, hot and cold water, as well as stews and sauces were stored for sale to customers. There were two types of bars and inns. Papina, plural papinae, was a term for a restaurant that only offered drinks and food but not lodging. Papinae were usually located along busy streets. They did business during the day by providing quick lunches to hungry workers on their way to the afternoon activities. Their most important business, however, came in the evening when people might stop for wine, company, or a more substantial meal. The Roman inn, calpona in Latin, not only served food and drinks like the papina, but also offered lodging to travelers. The calpona had a bar with a long counter like the papinae, but it also included guest rooms and other rooms like a triclinium and sitting rooms. Like the papinae, the calpona tended to house people of lesser means. The wealthy preferred to stop at houses or villas owned by themselves or one of their friends. Because the upper classes would generally dine at their own home or a friend's dinner party, the papinae and calponae focused on attracting the lower classes. Because of this, bars were often depicted in upper class literature as having a bad reputation. We get the sense of what the general atmosphere of a bar was, not only from literature, but also graffiti. The walls of bars are full of scribblings of patrons and owners. This includes complaints, prices, advertisements for prostitutes to quench other thirsts, and more. Harvey number 301 gives a few examples of this. The first says, Hedone says, you can get a drink here for only 1 ass. You can drink beer and wine for 2 aires. You can drink premium Falernian wine for 4 aires. You should note here that a daily wage would be about 4 aires. The second one reads, whoever wants to get his own drink can go on and drink from the sea. And finally, speaking of quenching other thirsts, another one reads, Palmyra the Thirst Quencher. Harvey number 302 is a passage from an unknown author entitled The Copa, or Barmaid. It describes the kind of sights and sounds one would expect to experience in a restaurant. The barmaid speaks, and she seeks to attract customers by promising music, dancing, and an abundance of wine. She says, what good is it for a weary man to be off somewhere in the hot dust rather than reclining here on the drinking couch? Here there are landscape paintings, drinking cups, roses, flutes, guitars, and a cool terrace roofed with shadowing reeds. Recline and drink from your cups of warm wine. Lift your ever refilled cups. Come here, weary one, and rest under the shadow of the vines. Crown your head with a garland of roses. Snatch a kiss from the pretty lips of a youthful girl. Barmaids such as the one depicted in Harvey number 302 had many real-life parallels, as we have many tombstones. Harvey number 303 is one example, and it reads, Amemone, a sweet woman and dear to her husband, lies in this tomb. She was a sweet barmaid whose reputation extended beyond her hometown and attracted many people to visit Tibur. Now the most powerful deity has taken away her fragile life, and kindly light has received her soul into the heavens. I, Philoctetes, made this inscription for my chaste wife. It is right that her name survive for all eternity. One of the most important parts of the bar experience was drinking wine. One important aspect of ancient Roman wine consumption was that it was rarely drunk straight. The Romans considered drinking undiluted wine to be too intoxicating, and those who did so were scorned as immoderate barbarians. Very often, the water used to dilute the wine was heated in a bowl placed over a stove. The hot water, calida, was then added to the wine so as to make it a warm or hot drink. The stoves used to heat the calida created a smoky atmosphere inside the papina. Another popular drink was conditum, a spiced wine. In some bars in Ostia, mortars, grinding stones, were found, testifying to the grinding of pepper and other spices for making conditum. In the passage translated here, Martial complains first of mixing high-quality wine with inferior wines. In the second passage, he tells how he recently received straight wine when he asked for it mixed with water. The first reads, what good does it do you, Tucca, to mix young wine stored in cheap Vatican jars with aged Falernian wine? The real crime is how you strangle the Falernian and pollute a good wine from Campania with such noxious poison. Maybe your dinner guests deserve to die, but such a costly bottle of wine certainly does not. The second one reads, a crafty tavern keeper in Ravenna recently cheated me. I asked for wine mixed with water, but he gave it to me straight. Despite the fact that the Papini and drinking taberni were popular replacements for the upper-class dinner party, it was very common for our sources to disparage these establishments as low-class magnets for criminals. Juvenal mentions this in his satires in Harvey number 307. Send someone to Ostia, Caesar, to find your provincial governor, but start your search in some large papina there. You will find him reclining next to some assassin. He'll be nestled in a crowd of sailors, thieves, and fugitive slaves. He'll be there amongst executioners, the builders of cheap coffins, and the eunuch priests of Cybele, who have finally stopped beating their drums only because they have passed out. There are no class distinctions in a place like that. The drinks are shared. There is no private couches at the table. No one is closer to the table than anyone else. This first passage is part of a longer discussion of activities that might be allowable for a young man, but not a respected senator. Visiting a papina was considered to be vulgar behavior for this governor, who apparently preferred the atmosphere of an Ostian papina to completing his official duties. But these places were popular because, unlike the baths and dinner parties, where social distinctions were important, everyone was treated equally. Because of this, bars, as a thoroughly lower-class establishment, became symbolic of uncouth behavior and therefore were shunned by the upper-class citizens of good upbringing, as Harvey number 308 shows. It says, I see how the brothel and greasy papina instill in you this desire for the city. Your little hut there provides pepper and spice faster than wine. There is no bar nearby to supply you with wine. There is no flute player who doubles as a prostitute to whose playing you can dance upon the earthen floor. Bars also had a low reputation because they were known as places you could go to gamble, even though it was illegal. That didn't stop people from gambling, as dice was frequently found in archaeological digs. Some bars would have rooms in the back in which you could spend some time with a prostitute, and a lot of inns had many rooms for this same purpose. The following inscription from Macernia in Italy includes a fictitious bill from a Calpona. While it is not completely certain, it seems that Eroticus was the innkeeper and Voluptas his wife. The quote at the end of the inscription seems to be an anecdote from Eroticus's life. Prostitution was common in Papini and especially in the larger Caponi. Even the names of the innkeeper, Eroticus, which means lover, and his wife, Voluptas, which means pleasure, seem so appropriate for the Calpona that they may be fictional or nicknames. This inscription reads, Lucius Calidus Eroticus made this for himself and for Fannia Voluptas. Let us calculate the bill for the innkeeper. The glass of wine costs 1 ice. The vegetable plate, 2 ires. The grill comes to 8 ires. Fodder for the mule comes to 2 ires. That mule be the enemy. The previous inscription is just one piece of evidence that sometimes customers were unhappy with their experiences. However, unhappy customers usually let the owner and other future patrons know about the unpleasantness through graffiti. Harvey number 312 has 3 graffiti from Pompeii that record witty criticisms of service people received while visiting Pompeii. Rooms could be small or lacking the expected amenities. The food and wine served may not always be good, and so these graffiti read, what a lot of tricks you use to deceive, innkeeper. You sell water, but privately drink unmixed wine. Another one reads, we have wet the bed, innkeeper. I confess we have done wrong. If you want to know why, there was no chamber pot in the room. And finally, the finance officer of the Emperor Nero says that the food here is poison. But graffiti weren't always about bad experiences, as Harvey number 313 shows. The first looks like a tab for food purchases. The final 2 record what Apelles Mus, the chamberlain of the emperor, and his brother Dexter did in town. It is likely that the 2 companions in the second text were the same Apelles and Dexter.